Welcome back, lovely ladies. If you want to become the woman of your dreams, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And join our Patreon for even more exclusive content. Now, let's dive into today's story.
Amir stood outside the unassuming brick building that housed the Gladstone Community Theatre, heart pounding in his chest. Although he had performed in small parts before, he had never felt such nerves before an audition. The bustling sidewalk on a bright Saturday afternoon only seemed to heighten his anxiety as he took in the chatter of people heading to nearby cafes and bookstores. He was of medium height, around 5 feet 10 inches, with a slender build that he had often worried made him look younger than his 23 years. His short black hair was neatly styled, and he wore comfortable jeans and a simple gray shirt. He clutched a folded printout of the audition scenes from Romeo and Juliet. Inside the lobby, cheerful volunteers welcomed each prospective cast member. One of them directed Amir down a narrow hallway to a makeshift waiting area. About a dozen people waited in folding chairs, flipping through scripts or fiddling with their phones. A bulletin board displayed posters of past productions, musicals, comedies, and the occasional Shakespearean play. Despite the hum of low voices and sporadic laughter, Amir felt an undercurrent of tension, as if everyone, including him, measured the competition sitting just a few chairs away. He picked a seat at the end of the row. Next to him sat a tall, lean man with curly hair who introduced himself as Daniel. Daniel had been glancing over a copy of the Romeo and Juliet script too, highlighting lines and jotting down little notes in the margins. "First audition?" Daniel asked quietly. Amir forced himself to exhale. "I've done a couple of small shows in college, but nothing here in town," he said. "Honestly, I'm not sure if I want Romeo, Mercutio, or even just a small part. I'm here to learn." Daniel gave a friendly grin. "That's the spirit. Sometimes the smaller roles turn out to be a lot more fun than the leads. Less pressure, you know?" Amir nodded. "Exactly." They settled into a companionable silence, while the rest of the hopefuls waited for their names to be called. The door to the audition room swung open, and a middle-aged woman with warm brown eyes and voluminous dark hair stepped out. This was Ms. Caldwell, the theater director. She scanned the sign-up sheet on her clipboard. "Amir? Amir Ghaffari?" His stomach did a small flip. He stood and gave Daniel a quick wave. "Wish me luck." Daniel shot him a thumbs up. "Break a leg." Amir followed Ms. Caldwell into the audition room, which was simply a large rehearsal area with a piano shoved against one wall and mirrors on another. A long folding table with a few chairs faced the open space. Ms. Caldwell took a seat in the center of the table, flanked by a younger man with a short beard and a woman who wore half-moon glasses and scribbled notes in a spiral notebook. "Hello, Amir," Ms. Caldwell said with a kind smile. "Thank you for coming. Did you have a particular role you had in mind?" He swallowed. "I was mostly considering Romeo or Mercutio, but I'm open to anything." The man next to Ms. Caldwell glanced up from a casting sheet. "Interesting. Do you mind reading a short scene? Let's do the balcony monologue for Romeo first. Then we might ask you to read something else." Amir agreed. He moved to the center of the room, script in hand. The overhead fluorescence hummed softly. He could feel all eyes on him. Drawing a breath, he launched into the iconic lines, letting his voice rise and fall with the poetry. He tried not to overdo it, focusing instead on delivering the text with sincerity. Whenever he spoke, Miss Caldwell watched with unwavering attention, occasionally nodding or flipping through what might have been her personal notes. "Not bad," she said once he finished, her voice calm. "I like your vocal range. You have a natural earnestness that could work well." Amir murmured a thank you, relieved that he had at least not drawn any frowns from the panel. Ms. Caldwell leaned back in her chair. "We're exploring a gender-bending angle for this production. I'd like to see if you'd read for Juliet. Would you be comfortable with that? He blinked, uncertain if he'd heard right. Read for Juliet? That's right. Our concept is to not necessarily restrict roles by gender. We think it might give the play a fresh perspective, only if you're open to it. He hesitated, but Ms. Caldwell's smile was encouraging. Finally, he nodded. Sure, I can read for Juliet. She handed him a scene. Here, let's do the moment when Juliet meets Romeo at the party. Focus on the vulnerability and that mixture of hope and apprehension. Amir held the new pages, scanning the lines quickly. He recognized them from his reading of the play in college. Juliet at the Capulet party, enthralled by the mysterious Romeo. The language was a swirl of romantic excitement and the fear of crossing boundaries. Standing in front of the panel once again, he tried to channel a softer, gentler tone. He allowed his posture to shift, stepping into the lines without overthinking. The lines felt unexpectedly comfortable. Each sentence slipped from his mouth with a kind of delicacy that surprised him. The text resonated in a way that his reading for Romeo had not. When he finished, Miss Caldwell exchanged a meaningful look with her colleagues. They jotted down notes, and the woman with half-moon glasses nodded with enthusiasm. All right, Amir, Miss Caldwell said. That will be all for now. We'll be making final decisions later this week, but I want you to know that was lovely. He felt a swell of warmth in his cheeks and managed a small bow. Thank you for the opportunity. Outside the audition room, he found Daniel leaning against the wall, arms crossed. How'd it go? Amir let out a breathless laugh. They asked me to read for Juliet. Daniel's eyes widened. Juliet? Wow, that's pretty bold. How'd you feel about it? I was nervous at first, but to be honest, it felt right. Daniel chuckled. Maybe you'll land the part. Amir couldn't tell if it was a joke, but he also saw sincerity in Daniel's expression. I don't know yet. They parted ways in the hallway, each returning to their daily routines. The callback results would appear in an email a few days later, they were told. Amir went home that evening with a head swimming full of lines and images. He lived alone in a modest studio apartment on the edge of town. After a quick dinner, he tried to distract himself by flipping through streaming channels, but all he could think about was the audition. The possibility of being cast as Juliet tugged at his mind. He found it both thrilling and unsettling. He had occasionally explored cross-dressing in private, though rarely spoke about it. The thought of wearing a traditionally female costume on stage electrified him in a way he was still struggling to make sense of. That night, as he prepared for bed, he gazed at his reflection in the mirror. He let the memory of the audition flood back, recalling how comfortable he felt delivering Juliet's lines. Although he had kept those personal inclinations hidden from all but a few close friends, the audition had cast them in a new light. Perhaps, he mused, the theater could be a space where he could express that piece of himself without the usual barriers. 4 days later, a message arrived in his inbox from the Gladstone Community Theater. He paced around his small living area before finally opening the email. His eyes landed on the sentence, "We are pleased to offer you the role of Juliet in our upcoming production of Romeo and Juliet." A wave of excitement hit him so hard that he nearly dropped his phone. He read it twice, just to be sure. Immediately, he sent out a text to Daniel, whose number he had saved after the audition. "Got Juliet. How about you?" Daniel's response came moments later. "Congrats. I got Tybalt. We're about to cause some drama, you and I." A grin lit Amir's face. He resisted an urge to shout in celebration. Instead, he sank onto his worn couch, phone in hand, staring at the email. Rehearsals would start on Monday evening. His life, he realized, was about to change. On Monday, Amir arrived at the theater early. The interior was a maze of backstage corridors, dressing rooms, and a costume storage space that smelled faintly of mothballs and sawdust. Miss Caldwell had requested that principal actors gather on stage for a read-through. The stage itself was modest, with well-worn floorboards and a battered red curtain that had seen better days. The cast assembled in a circle of chairs. Miss Caldwell introduced herself formally, along with her assistant director, Mr. Hughes, who had been the man with the short beard. The woman with half-moon glasses turned out to be Claire, the production manager. They ran through a few announcements about scheduling and expectations. Then Ms. Caldwell beamed at everyone. "All right, everyone. I'm thrilled to get started. We have an ambitious approach to this production. We're not worrying about the gender of the actor in each role. I've cast each part based on who felt most connected to the character. It will require trust, openness, and a willingness to explore. I think we have the makings of something extraordinary here." She gestured to Amir. "This is Amir Ghaffari, playing Juliet." A ripple of applause threaded through the circle. Amir felt his face warm again, but he managed to smile. "And here we have Marcus Rivera as Romeo," Ms. Caldwell continued, indicating a wiry man with a broad smile and a confident posture. "Daniel Reed as Tybalt, Adrian Summers as Mercutio, and so on." Marcus turned to Amir with a friendly nod. "I look forward to performing with you." Amir returned the nod. "Same here." They began the first read-through, diving right into the text. The group took turns with lines, occasionally stumbling over archaic language, but Miss Caldwell and Mr. Hughes offered clarifications along the way. No one seemed particularly fazed by the mixing of traditional gender roles. Amir read Juliet's lines with a careful tenderness, watching how the other actors responded. During breaks, Miss Caldwell offered helpful notes. By the end of the session, Amir was both exhilarated and exhausted. Marcus approached him as everyone was gathering their belongings. "You know, I didn't realize how intense this story can feel until you're actually reading it out loud," Marcus said, pulling a water bottle from his backpack. "Juliet's lines have a certain fragility, but there's a lot of inner strength there too." Amir nodded. "I'm starting to see that. She might appear innocent, but there's courage behind those words." "It's a big role to carry," Marcus said, and there was genuine respect in his voice. "Let me know if you want to rehearse any scenes outside of official rehearsals. I'm game." "Absolutely," Amir said. "I'll take any help I can get." They exchanged contact details. As the theater's lights dimmed behind them, Amir left feeling a deep sense of anticipation. This was more than he had bargained for. More responsibility, yes, but also a stirring undercurrent of thrill. A week into rehearsals, Ms. Caldwell announced it was time to try costumes for specific scenes. "Nothing elaborate yet," she said, "just the basics for blocking and movement. But we want everyone to get used to the feel of the garments, especially those that might be less familiar with these styles." Amir's heart thudded. He had known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it more real. After the group practice, Claire took him to the costume room to try on a rehearsal dress, a stand-in for Juliet's final outfit, once the real costume arrived from a supplier. The outfit turned out to be a flowing dress in a pale lavender shade, made of a cheap fabric. Claire apologized. "It's just for practice, I'm afraid. The final one will be a beautiful piece in real silk or velvet. This is just so you can get comfortable moving in it." Amir stepped behind a makeshift screen in the corner of the costume area. It was quiet enough to hear the soft hum of the building's old ventilation system. He pulled the dress on, carefully sliding it over his arms and shoulders. The bodice fit him snugly, and the skirt swayed around his legs when he moved. It was strange and yet comforting, stirring something inside him that he had once only explored behind closed doors. When he emerged, Claire's face brightened. "It needs some alterations, but it'll do for rehearsal. How does it feel?" He took a few steps, noticing the sweep of the fabric. Better than I expected, actually. Claire's eyes sparkled with encouragement. Great. Ms. Caldwell wants you on stage in 10 minutes for the balcony scene. Let's go. Walking through the corridors in the lavender dress sent a thrill through Amir's chest, though he did his best to keep his expression neutral. Occasionally, a passing stagehand or cast member offered a smile or a thumbs up. He wondered if anyone sensed how meaningful this was for him. Though some of them likely viewed it as no more than a theatrical necessity, for him, it was a taste of freedom. When he stepped onto the stage for the balcony scene with Marcus, Miss Caldwell's expression reflected satisfaction. Wonderful. Let's get the physicality right, she said. Amir, Juliet's movements in this scene are light but purposeful. And Marcus, you'll be directly below the balcony to start. We'll figure out the final set piece later. They ran through the lines. At first, Amir was too self-conscious about how he appeared in the dress to fully immerse himself in Juliet's emotional arc, but after the second run, Ms. Caldwell paused them. Amir, don't worry so much about how you look, she said gently. If you're up there, consumed with the character's feelings, the appearance will take care of itself. Let Juliet's thoughts guide you. He breathed in, nodded, and found a calm focus. On the third run, he allowed his gaze to drift over the imaginary moon and the faraway orchard below. He let the lines flow in a voice that wasn't forced into a falsetto, but that softened at the edges, capturing the eager heart of Juliet. Marcus reciprocated by delivering Romeo's lines with quiet reverence. The scene felt more organic, and when it ended, Miss Caldwell clapped quietly. That was lovely. Keep going in that direction. Amir exhaled, cheeks warm. For the first time since being cast, he felt truly connected to Juliet's world. As rehearsals intensified over the following weeks, the cast bonded during late-night line readings, coffee breaks, and impromptu hangouts at the nearby diner. More than once, Amir found himself discussing scene motivations with Marcus over greasy fries and milkshakes long after the official rehearsal ended. Daniel occasionally joined these after-hours sessions, teasing Amir about dramatic monologues while also giving thoughtful insights into Tybalt's aggression. Meanwhile, costume fittings became more involved, culminating in the arrival of the actual Juliet dress. It was a marvel of craftsmanship, pale pink silk with elaborate trim along the neckline and sleeves. The moment Amir put it on, he felt an inexplicable rush. Stepping in front of the mirror, he could barely hide his awe at how well it fit. Claire adjusted the waist, eyeing the reflection. We'll need to tighten the bodice slightly, otherwise I think it's perfect. Amir let his fingertips brush the fabric. It's beautiful, he murmured. Even the simple act of standing in the costume gave him a feeling of greater poise, as if wearing it pulled him more fully into Juliet's mindset. Under the stage lights, it looked even more luminous. During one break, Ms. Caldwell caught Amir watching his reflection in the hallway mirror. She gave a gentle laugh, not in mockery, but in solidarity. Costumes can do that. They carry stories in themselves. When you wear them, you have the chance to inhabit a different world. Amir nodded, not sure how much to reveal about his deeper feelings. It helps me understand Juliet more. She patted his shoulder. And that, in turn, helps you do her justice. The cross-dressing aspect of the production drew curiosity from others in the community. A few promotional materials had hinted at the twist, and whispers circulated online. Some questioned the decision to cast a man as Juliet, while others praised it as a refreshing take. The local newspaper interviewed Miss Caldwell, and the article was generally positive, although the headline read, "Gender-bending Romeo and Juliet, bold or controversial." Amir tried not to fixate on the opinions swirling around them. The performance schedule was set for 6 weeks away, and the time leading up to opening night was jam-packed with scene work, choreography for the party scenes, and endless run-throughs. Yet he couldn't entirely avoid the chatter. One evening, he stepped out the backstage door to find a small crowd of local college students who had come to interview cast members for a class project. They recognized him from the role announcement. "Is it weird wearing a dress and playing Juliet?" one asked, phone camera aimed at his face. Amir held back the urge to roll his eyes. He answered diplomatically, "Theater is about creativity. If it helps bring out the story's emotional core, it's worth exploring." He excused himself as politely as possible. Although the interview left a sour taste, it also reminded him how important it was to commit wholeheartedly. He needed to see this through, no matter what some people might think. Backstage tensions grew as opening night approached. The cast began full dress rehearsals, complete with lighting cues, music transitions, and the complexities of scene changes. Rehearsals dragged into late hours, fueling occasional outbursts of frustration when lines were flubbed or stagehands missed a prop placement. One Friday evening, Ms. Caldwell insisted on running Act Two's final scene 3 times in a row. Everyone was exhausted. At one point, Daniel accidentally missed his entrance as Tybalt, prompting Ms. Caldwell to toss her hands in the air. "This cannot happen on opening night," she said, exasperated. "Again." Amir saw the fatigue etched on Daniel's face. He tried to offer an encouraging look. They staggered through the scene once more. Although the lines were spoken clearly, the emotional punch felt absent due to the mounting exhaustion. When the rehearsal finally ended close to midnight, Ms. Caldwell, calmer now, addressed the drained ensemble. "Thank you all for your perseverance. We're getting there, but we have to refine the final pieces in the next few days. Now go home and rest." Amir practically stumbled into the dressing room to remove his Juliet costume. The other cast members looked equally drained. Marcus flopped onto a chair, kicking off his leather boots. "I love this show, but if we do that scene again, I might collapse on the spot." Adrienne, playing Mercutio, let out a soft groan. "My feet are killing me. At least you don't have to deal with heels." Amir couldn't help a small smile. "I do have to deal with a tight bodice, though. This thing feels like a corset half the time." Daniel shook his head, rummaging in his duffel bag for a change of shirt. "We all better rest. Tomorrow's another day." They filed out into the chilly night air, parting ways with tired waves. In the final week, the momentum shifted from chaotic to focused. Scenes started clicking into place with renewed precision. Ms. Caldwell offered fewer corrections during run-throughs. The lighting team perfected the transitions, bathing the set in dreamy pinks for the party scenes and ominous oranges for the confrontations. Amir felt his confidence building each time he donned the Juliet dress. The movements had grown second nature: how to gather the skirt so it wouldn't catch on the set pieces, how to tilt his head when delivering Juliet's lines about love and defiance. More than that, wearing the dress no longer triggered the initial jitters. Instead, it gave him a sense of wholeness he couldn't fully articulate. He carried that energy beyond the stage, noticing subtle changes in how he walked down the street or shopped for groceries. The night before opening, they held the final dress rehearsal. An invited audience of friends and a few local arts enthusiasts filled the seats. The performance was far from perfect. Props were dropped, and a lighting cue went astray, but the cast delivered the story with heart. Amir's portrayal of Juliet garnered applause and cheers at the curtain call, making him glow with a mix of pride and relief. Backstage afterward, Ms. Caldwell gathered the cast in a huddle. "We've worked tirelessly to reach this point. Tomorrow, we do it for real with a paying audience. Let the nerves sharpen your performance, not cripple it. Break a leg, everyone." The group parted with enthusiastic applause and some nervous laughter. Amir lingered for a few minutes, carefully hanging up his costume and placing his wig on the stand. He had decided to use a styled wig that matched Juliet's described long hair, a dark, wavy piece that complemented his features. He ran his fingers through its curls, feeling anticipation bubble within him. Tomorrow night, he thought, would be a turning point. Opening night arrived in a whirl of final costume checks, makeup application, and last-minute line reviews. The adrenaline backstage was palpable. Daniel paced, reciting Tybalt's lines under his breath, while Marcus quietly warmed up his voice in a corner. Stagehands rushed around adjusting set pieces, and the air smelled of hairspray and fresh paint. When Ms. Caldwell announced 5 minutes to curtain, Amir's heart pounded. He was already in place for the opening scene. He squeezed his eyes shut, inhaling deeply to calm his nerves. The heavy velvet curtain swayed with the hum of the audience just beyond. Then it began. The lights dimmed, and the hush of the crowd blanketed the space. The narrator introduced the story, and the stage lit up for the Capulet household scene. Amir entered, posture elegant, trying to channel Juliet's innocence mixed with the complicated emotional layers. Even from the stage, he felt the audience's attention locked on him. He didn't falter. He let the lines cascade from his lips, focusing on how Juliet would feel at the dawn of young romance and the gloom of family strife. The turning point came during the ball scene. Music played, and the Capulet guests danced in swirling costumes. Amir stood to the side, wearing a gauzy mask for the masquerade. Then Marcus, as Romeo, approached. Their exchange crackled with tension and longing. Amir heard a collective hush wash over the audience as Juliet's confusion and fascination melded in the lines they spoke. When they ended in a soft, well-choreographed gesture of shared wonder, the applause came spontaneously. Later, the balcony scene demanded a depth of vulnerability. Standing on the small raised platform, bathed in pale blue light, Amir gazed down at Romeo. He let himself feel Juliet's fear of discovery, her youthful boldness, her trembling excitement at the possibility of love. He nearly forgot the crowd as he navigated the words. Marcus, responding with gentle fervor, completed the illusion. When the scene concluded, a hush lingered before a trickle of applause. Then the lights faded to black. Act after act, the story unfolded. Daniel's Tybalt roared with aggression in the confrontation scenes, while Adrienne's Mercutio dazzled with wit. The tragic final scene, a tomb scattered with fallen roses, had Amir in Juliet's final moments deliver a quiet but emotionally intense farewell to Romeo's motionless form. He paused for a beat that felt like an eternity. Then the lights cut. Silence. A second later, thunderous applause erupted. The cast reassembled for curtain call. Amir, still catching his breath, felt a surge of gratitude and something close to joy as the audience rose to their feet. Miss Caldwell joined them on stage, radiant with pride, and signaled a bow for all the actors. For Amir, the sound of that standing ovation was dizzying and humbling all at once. Backstage, the cast embraced in celebration. Marcus clasped Amir's hand and pulled him into a quick hug. "You were incredible," Marcus said, voice thick with emotion. "I've never felt that kind of energy on stage before." "You were amazing too," Amir managed. "That balcony scene, my heart was racing the whole time." Daniel jumped in, giving them both a playful nudge. "You guys killed it, and I guess I was all right as Tybalt." Laughter rippled through the group. Ms. Caldwell approached, her eyes shining. "I'm so proud of every one of you. Now get ready for the reception in the lobby. People are going to want to meet our star-crossed leads." The lobby was buzzing with conversation, the smell of pastries and punch in the air. Friends and theater supporters offered congratulatory words, praising the nuanced portrayals. Amir found himself drifting from one conversation to another, repeating thanks and gracious nods. Occasionally, a few overly curious attendees asked more about the cross-dressing choice. He answered carefully, emphasizing the artistic motive, aware that it was far more personal than he could fully explain in a casual conversation. After the last guests trickled out, he stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The night was cool, the moon high. He savored the lingering adrenaline. A familiar voice spoke behind him. "It was a success," Daniel said, leaning against the building's brick wall. "How are you feeling?" Amir turned, his stage makeup still faintly visible. "Elated, exhausted, happy." Daniel grinned, nodding. "People really loved the show, and you know what? They really embraced the cross-dressing twist. I've overheard a bunch of conversations about how it added a new dimension to the story." Amir wrapped his arms around himself to ward off the chill. "I was worried some would hate it." "Sure, there might be a few who don't get it," Daniel said. "But tonight, the applause spoke for itself. And your performance, man, it was extraordinary. The sincerity was obvious, and it drew everyone in." Amir found himself smiling at the night sky. "Feels like I can finally breathe." They stood in comfortable silence, letting the distant hum of traffic fill the quiet. In the weeks that followed, the production continued to draw decent crowds. Word of mouth spread about the Romeo and Juliet with a unique perspective. Some nights were sold out, and each performance, Amir refined his portrayal. The role never felt routine. Each time the lights dimmed, that sense of stepping onto sacred ground overtook him. That sense grew stronger each night, especially when he slipped into Juliet's costume and felt the swish of the dress around his legs. His parents attended a matinee midway through the run. Though they lived in another city, he had invited them in a moment of courage. They had never known the depth of his private interest in feminine clothing, but they loved him, and if they found the concept odd, they kept their thoughts mostly to themselves. After the show, they congratulated him on his performance, proud of his commitment. His mother even said, in a slightly hushed tone, "You looked beautiful up there. You brought Juliet to life." Tears prickled Amir's eyes at that. All the same, it wasn't seamless acceptance from everyone. One evening, as Amir was leaving the theater, an older man in a suit, apparently a local arts patron, approached him. "I saw your show tonight," he said, face unreadable. "Quite a performance, though I'll admit I'm not sure it's the right direction. Shakespeare was meant to be performed by men originally, yes, but as men. This twist you've done, well, it confuses me." Amir gave a polite nod. "I understand it's not for everyone, sir." The man shrugged. "Still, I have to applaud your courage." He walked off before Amir could respond. Despite a handful of such encounters, the majority of feedback remained positive. The cast's camaraderie grew, culminating in lively outings after weekend shows. They'd crowd into a local pub, recounting comedic mishaps from backstage or analyzing each other's performances. Amir noticed the subtle shift in how people treated him, more open, more respectful of the vulnerability he brought to the role. It was as if by playing Juliet, he'd shown them a side of himself he'd once kept hidden, and they met him there without recoil. On stage, the lines between acting and day-to-day life blurred. Outside the theater, he found himself wearing clothing that felt more fluid, nothing overtly dramatic, just small shifts like a scarf in a softer fabric, or fitted jeans that highlighted his waist. On more than one occasion, he caught a glimpse of himself in a store window and felt a wave of contentment. For too long, he had tucked that part of himself away. Now, he was ready to embrace it without fear, especially since the community had largely accepted him as Juliet. He might not proclaim it loudly, but he also no longer hid it. As the final week of the production neared, Amir realized how much he would miss playing Juliet. The run had been extended by popular demand, and the last performance date approached on a Sunday. Ms. Caldwell planned a wrap party the following night. With only a handful of shows left, each performance felt charged with an undercurrent of farewell. On the last Thursday, they performed for a nearly sold-out crowd. The applause soared after the balcony scene, and by the time they reached the tragic finale, sniffles from the audience were audible. The cast bowed to thunderous cheers. Stepping off stage, Amir felt a swirl of emotions. He almost didn't want to remove the costume. Back in the dressing room, he unpinned the wig from his scalp, carefully placing it on its stand. His reflection in the mirror caught his eye. Under the stage makeup, he looked both exhilarated and slightly sad. Daniel approached, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You all right?" Amir nodded, letting out a breath. "Just realizing we only have a few more nights of this. It's been big for me." He avoided certain words, not wanting to break down mid-sentence. Daniel squeezed his shoulder reassuringly. "That's theater, though, isn't it? A rush of intensity, then it's over. But it never fully leaves you." Amir set the wig aside and turned to Daniel with a faint smile. "You're right. It never leaves." On Sunday, the final performance arrived. Tension backstage was tinged with a kind of bittersweet excitement. They knew the show was polished by now, and they intended to give the best performance yet. Amir slid into the Juliet gown, feeling its delicate fabric against his skin, marveling at how this garment had become a second skin these last weeks. Just before the house opened, Miss Caldwell gathered them in a circle, linking hands. "We poured our hearts into this show," she said softly. "Tonight, let's celebrate all we've achieved. You have my gratitude and admiration. Now one last time, let's bring the story to life." The circle squeezed together momentarily before everyone rushed to their places. Amir stood in the wings, focusing on calm, controlled breathing, waiting for his first entrance. The audience buzz was louder than usual, fully packed seats, with some late arrivals trying to squeeze into standing room only. At the cue, the stage lights went up. Each scene flowed seamlessly into the next, as though propelled by the collective desire of the cast to make this final performance unforgettable. Amir felt the lines come alive in his voice, each syllable brimming with raw emotion. When the balcony scene arrived, it was as if the audience dissolved and only Juliet's world remained. Marcus delivered Romeo's lines with a fervor that made Amir's chest tighten. Applause broke out at the act break, but it was subdued compared to the crescendo at the show's end. In the final scene, when Juliet awakens to find Romeo lifeless, Amir let his voice quaver, the stage seemingly shrinking to just him and Marcus. He pressed a kiss to Romeo's forehead before delivering Juliet's final lines in a gentle hush. The stage lights dimmed on the image of Juliet's heartbreak, and the silence that followed was charged. Then the applause thundered. The lights rose for the curtain call. Amir stepped forward when Ms. Caldwell gestured, and the roar grew even louder. He bowed deeply, tears at the corners of his eyes. The entire cast linked hands for one final bow, and the curtain swept closed. But the applause continued, prompting Ms. Caldwell to open them for a second curtain call. Backstage became a flurry of congratulations, tearful hugs, and shouts of, "We did it!" The emotional exhaustion hit all at once. Amir found Marcus, Daniel, and Adrienne in the corner, and they all pulled each other into a group hug. Miss Caldwell appeared and joined the huddle, her voice strained with joyful tears. "I've directed many shows, but this one will stay with me." The camaraderie was heartwarming, and Amir felt lightheaded with relief and joy. This show, for many reasons, was monumental for him. The following night, the cast and crew gathered at a small banquet hall for the wrap party. Tables were covered with trays of finger foods, and a microphone was set up near the small stage area. People mingled in semi-formal attire, exchanging stories and inside jokes. Music played softly in the background. Amir arrived a bit late, wearing a simple button-up shirt and dark slacks. He was greeted by a wave of cheers from cast members already halfway into their first drinks. "Juliet is here," Daniel joked, raising a plastic cup in mock toast. "Welcome, my dear cousin." He bowed theatrically. Amir laughed and made a playful bow. "You'll always be Tybalt to me, you know." Marcus beckoned them over to a table where Ms. Caldwell and Mr. Hughes sat. "Let's get some food before the speeches start," Marcus suggested. They loaded their plates with snacks. Ms. Caldwell tapped a fork against her glass, and the room quieted. She stood, beaming at the group. "Everyone, I want to thank each of you for making this production not only successful, but truly meaningful. This has been a collaborative effort at every level. The cast, the crew, the volunteers, the staff, each of you contributed something special." She turned her gaze to Amir. "And to our Juliet, who showed us a dimension of the role that I don't think any of us foresaw. You set the tone for the show. Thank you." A wave of applause followed, leaving Amir flushed. He mouthed a thank you, his heart warm with gratitude. People clinked cups and shared individual toasts. Daniel reminisced about the first chaotic rehearsal where he had been certain the show would flop. Marcus joked about the time his wig fell off mid-scene, an off-stage mishap that still cracked everyone up. Then attention fell on Amir, who found himself pressed to say a few words. He approached the small stage area, clearing his throat. "I never imagined I'd play Juliet. When Ms. Caldwell first asked me to read her lines, I thought it was a crazy idea." He paused, scanning the faces of friends and colleagues who had become a tight-knit community. "But it became an experience I'll treasure forever. It felt like stepping into a realm I'd been hovering around for years, but never fully dared to enter. I want to thank all of you for letting me feel at ease. For me, it was more than just a role." He left it at that, not wanting to overshare, but hoping they understood the significance. The applause and smiles assured him they did. A DJ put on livelier music, and people drifted to the dance floor. Others stayed at their tables, chatting over small plates. The atmosphere was celebratory, yet tinged with the knowledge they were, in some ways, saying goodbye to this shared chapter. Later, Amir sat at a corner table alone, sipping a soda. Daniel slid into the seat beside him. "Hey, you're missing out on all the dancing." Amir shrugged, a content smile on his lips. "I just needed a moment to take it in." Daniel nodded. "I get that. This show was a big step for you, wasn't it?" Amir placed the cup down, turning to face his friend. He chose his words carefully. "I've had an inclination toward wearing clothing typically associated with women for a while, but I always kept that side to myself. This show gave me a reason to wear those dresses in front of an entire audience without shame. It's changed the way I see everything." Daniel's expression was compassionate. He spoke softly. "I'm glad you got that. And just know you're not alone. Anytime you need to talk about it, I'm here." Amir's eyes misted, but he blinked away the tears. "Thank you. That means a lot." They exchanged a sincere handshake before Daniel steered him onto the dance floor, insisting they join the others. The rest of the night passed in a swirl of laughter, dancing, and heartfelt goodbyes. By the end, the cast parted ways with promises to keep in touch, to collaborate on future productions, or simply to stay friends. A few days after the wrap party, Amir returned to the theater to pick up a few personal items he had left in the dressing room. The space was strangely quiet without the daily bustle of rehearsals. The stage was half disassembled, set pieces already moved or stored. He walked to the dressing room, found his things, and paused at the empty row of mirrors. He recalled the nights he had slipped into Juliet's gown, the sound of chatter and hairspray in the background, the electric sense of possibility. On his way out, Ms. Caldwell happened to come in. She was carrying a few set decorations in a box. "Amir," she greeted him warmly. "I was hoping to see you. I have something for you." She motioned him to follow her. In her office, she handed him a garment bag. "It's the rehearsal dress you wore in the early stages. We won't need it again, and I thought you might like to keep it." He accepted it carefully, emotion catching in his throat. "Thank you," he said softly. "I really appreciate this." Miss Caldwell inclined her head. "I know it's not the final show gown, but this one had its own significance. Wear it, keep it, do what feels right." Her gaze was warm as he thanked her again. Then she walked him out to the lobby. "I'm sure we'll work together again. For now, take care of yourself." Outside, the day was sunny, a gentle breeze ruffling the garment bag in his hands. He placed it carefully in his car. Sitting in the driver's seat, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror. He saw someone not defined by a single role, but someone who had tasted a kind of liberation he never thought possible. Starting the engine, he realized this was not the end of something, but the continuation of a path he now felt brave enough to follow, whether on stage or in daily life. He pulled away from the curb, the quiet sense of purpose guiding him forward. That sense lingered as he drove across town. At the next red light, he caught sight of a poster advertising an upcoming show at a different community theater. He smiled inwardly, reflecting that new theatrical opportunities would surely come. Whatever form they took, he'd bring his whole self to them, just as he had done with Juliet. There would always be challenges ahead, opinions of strangers, and the daily demands of real life. But with every performance of the now finished Romeo and Juliet, he had found a place that embraced his expression. Even if the stage lights were off and the final curtain had fallen, the memory of stepping onto that stage in Juliet's gown would remain. It had opened doors he hadn't fully known were there. Now that they stood open, he intended to keep walking forward, and in that moment, driving away from the theater for the last time, he felt ready for the next act. The garment bag in the back seat reminded him of all those nights he had poured his spirit into Juliet's lines, and how each step across that stage had somehow become a step toward a more honest way of living. He held fast to that feeling as he navigated the busy streets, moving forward, calm and resolute, with a bright horizon ahead.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.